r/scariest stories. Posted by u/onewaymirror1. Don't break the rules. I broke the first one. I used to work as a truck driver prior to the worldwide pandemic, but to the last date all work had been put a halt considering the safety norms and the lockdown. The past time had been extremely difficult for me as jobs were unavailable for truck drivers. I went broke and had fallen into a debt. I was in a financial peril. It was not until up late November when I stumbled upon an advertisement that were hiring overnight truck drivers. It had to be my last chance of earning some money and paying off my debts, and start my life from the start. Considering all my predicaments, all I did apply ASAP. I didn't expect they'd call me within 3 days, as salary they were offering was a bit too high for the qualifications and sector pertaining to the job. I was under the impression that seeing an alluring salary would surely attract many job applicants, so the chances of selection were likely less. However, they called me, but the talk was brief. The man sounded as coy, keeping the talk as much as to the point. To the quite contrary, he didn't sounded rude, either. Anyways, it didn't bother me and I was happy than ever before. I joined on 2nd of December and it was the coldest month of the year. Snowfall had lately fallen in November, which had sunken the degrees of thermometer to 10 during the day, and easily below 5 degrees Celsius during nights. I had made my preparation prior to visiting my destined place, and as they had informed me about the work I had to do, so I didn't need to meet them in person. I reported at the office at 9:30 p.m. I usually followed my dictum, if you need to be there, show up early, which had helped me many a times considering how lazy I was. The office itself was situated at the obscurest part of the town, indeed, situated at the border of the town, of what I had noted while traveling in my taxi. As I disembarked from taxi, unmistakably I knew the building standing in front of me, all alone, had to be their office and was closed at the time. Office facade facing the lot where trucks and trailers stood lifelessly, there were many of them parked but some were out of my sight to make a guess. I proceeded to walk towards the entrance, and was overwhelmed by a sensation akin to as if I was being watched, especially from the truck cabins, dim shadows that were being casted by reflections behind the windshield and looked as if staring into my soul. I couldn't help it. I tried to push the thought away from my mind and focus on tonight's important work. I wandered outside for a while and found the truck on the side road, which was ready to dispatch. Its lights were on and it rumbled like a sleeping cat. And then I met him, Mike. Mike was standing at the co-driver's side and greeted me with a handshake. He introduced himself and told he was the co-driver assisting me for the night. He looked in his 40s and wore a black hat and a black leather jacket which looked oversized on his skinny body. He wore all black color all over him, which looked seemingly odd to this late fashion. His face seemed smeared with oil like an iron lock, but he sounded amiable to the way he introduced himself. "Are you afraid of the late night drives, Mr. Spencer?" he chuckled at the end. A watchful silence for me greeted all of it, as I wondered they never told me that I had a co-driver. Anyways, I didn't want to look like an asshole, so I managed a smile on my face and introduced myself. At least I had someone to accompany me and assist through the journey. Apparently, driving would become less straining, I thought. It was already 10 p.m. and we had made a couple of small talks about random topics and, of course, we might have even left the town behind. Trucks' high beams were rendered obsolete by the unimaginable dark that lay ahead. However, low beams provided a compromised vision, so it was pretty much difficult to guess your passing by surroundings. I was driving and Mike was studying the GPS and map, and checking the compartments every now and then. "Hey mate, what we got here?" He sounded curious, and after a pause he ventured, "A set of rules? What does it say?" I shrugged, keeping my focus ahead. There was a moment of silence before he spoke, or I guess some other part of him spoke. "They're scribbled down, the rules. A list is given." He cleared his throat before he spoke with apparent uneasiness in his voice. 1 at 12 a.m., the engine would go off on its own. Don't try to start the truck as it won't work how much you try. Don't try to leave the cabin, either. 2. You need to act quick now, turn off your cabin lights, AC, and make sure to turn off your radio as well. Lay down on your seat or do whatever so that you're not visible to the entity lurking outside. After 30 minutes or so, the engine would roar to life again by itself. It means you're clear. You can now continue driving. Now I shot a curious glance over at Mike. The latter was still trying to make sense of what he has just recited. Sure enough, he once looked at me with a puzzled look on his face. He continued. 3. After 1 a.m. at any moment you'd receive a call on your mobile. Don't answer it. But if it's a message asking for your location, you need to reply it, but you're wise enough to provide them a wrong location. 4. At any instant after 2 a.m., You'll hear a honking of a horn to take a pass. However, you would not notice any headlights or any vehicle, but, for your own good sake, don't even think of glancing at any of your rearview mirror to take the look, as you might see something that might scare the hell out of you, leading to losing your control over the truck, or you might even veer off the road. For your curiosity's sake, we may inform you that it will be a human-looking creature running on his all four limbs, but for God's sake, don't look it, just don't. Don't let it overtake you, so maintain a good speed. 60 miles per hour would be sufficient to guarantee your safety. For good heavens, it's a poor prank someone trying to scare, I said, interjecting Mike. Strange to say, the same feeling as before, as of being watched, and trepidation have started to take a conscious form inside me. And it was a distinct feeling that couldn't be helped. He continued. 5. This rule is important. At sharp 3 a.m. you will come across a woman hitchhiking at one side of the road. She would be wearing all white clothes, her hair's covering all of her face. Stop and let her in. She will sit and may try to interact with you. She will most likely try to distract you, but don't interact or speak anything. You may feel a freezing chill inside your cabin, but trying turning on AC wouldn't work. Maintain your calm during the journey and avoid looking her if you don't want to piss your pants. You're safe until you get panicked. 6. At 4 a.m. she would disappear suddenly by herself, and from the time after you're safe and can drive without worrying to follow any rules. After he had finished, he said, "What can all this mean? But who would even try to scare us with this poor joke, if it's a prank?" Now, having reduced the speed to considerable miles, I said, looking at him, "What time is it, Mike?" The latter was still holding the paper in his skinny hands. "It's 11 p.m., but what can we do? Do we really need to follow the rules?" Mike said. I didn't say anything after that. What else was there to say? Mike crumbled the paper and threw it inside the glove box, and I turned on the radio, thinking that it would help us divert our mind. After a while, 30 minutes or so, it was turned to switch sides. Now Mike was driving and I was at co-driver's seat. When I checked the time, it was already 12:30 a.m. and nothing had occurred out of ordinary. Eventually we realized that it was just a prank. It had to be a sick hell of a joke, possibly some crazy lunatic trying to scare us. As though, sure enough, the truck's engine didn't stop at 12 a.m. after all. We were driving smoothly. The cabin felt silent once again, as we didn't have much to talk upon. Just a sense of revelation had just fallen. I was getting bored out of my mind now, and out of curiosity I fetched the paper out of glove box and smoothened the paper. I laughed inaudibly to myself, and wondered that how I had been scared at the first place. I made a quick look before throwing it outside in the gloom of encroaching dark. I went through them at once, then realized that there were a total of 8 rules. First, it occurred to me that Mike has been mistaken, but then a terrifying revelation. I skipped the preamble and read from the first rule. I proceeded to read them one by one. 1. The first rule is that you have follow all rules as they demand. If you fail to follow any one of the given rules, keep in mind that the next rule or the preceding incidents will not occur or won't be applicable. So make sure to follow them. If you screw somewhere in between, only to say, "The entity that controls our Fed have mercy on you." 2. At 10 p.m., you would find a man near your truck dressed all up in black clothes. By any means don't talk to him. He may cajole you into a conversation and he will do anything to get into the cabin. Ignore him completely, just get into the truck and press the gas pedal. It might try to follow you for some distance, so keep maintaining a good speed until it's gone. Also keep in mind that you're gonna encounter it again in rule number 4, remember it will come back again. Rest of the rules were written same as Mike, or whoever he was, had recited. As I read this, my heart ached and it almost fell into the pit of my stomach. The same fear now gained a complete mastery over me. And I realized at once, that all the moments of fear I had experienced today had just crystallized into a single sinister reality. Before I even dared to turn my head towards it, I suddenly felt a ghostly pull envelope me, as if long fingers of unholy entity were reaching out of everywhere and raking my flesh.